Yeah, I think it is started now.
Yeah, we must be live. The light is on. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our show tonight. I'm Mark Davenport, but I have to let you know right away that this black halo around me does not imply any devilish intentions. It's just the wood stove, the top of the wood stove behind me. But here we are. It's a nice frame.
And there's still pipe coming out your head.
Yeah.
That is the only illumination coming down.
That's our studio lighting, yes.
Yeah, we are here in our cope room of Paradiso Integrale, not in our normal room, which is in the other house over here. And we are happy to have guests here.
Yes, we're really pleased that we have someone, they're going to do a presentation live. Yes, from, if I can reach out and hit him if I don't like what he says. But anyway, I want to say that, of course, we are coming to you live from Paradiso Integrale in Umbria, in Italy. And this is a very special occasion to have our guests live in person. And I guess we should say something about, before we get into the guests, about how people should be watching tonight, what they can do.
Yeah, just on the website, thewisdomfactory.net, the-IEC-conference-2018. But there's an easier way. When you are just on thewisdomfactory.net, on top in the header is always the next show. And when you click on that pinkish colored thing, you will be led to this website.
Right. And I think I should say that's Heidi. You may know her.
Yeah.
She's always here. And she's the technical genius behind these productions.
Okay, shall we go to our guests?
Do you want to do that?
No, you can do that. You wanted to do the introduction. No?
Well, then I will. All right. Well, we have the pleasure tonight to have with us Dr. Tom Habib and his lovely partner and colleague, Christine. And they are gracing us with their presence as they return home from the Integral
European Conference.
Integral European Conference at Lake Balaton in Hungary, which started last weekend, went through the week and ended up with a grand tour of Hungary by bus. Mm-hmm. And we're catching them on their way home. And so we're really pleased to be able to welcome them here tonight.
And I wanted to say that we met last year on the conference. 2 years ago, in the last conference.
Yes.
And we were in the same section doing presentation. We were about conscious aging. That was the beginning of our conscious aging series. And he did his work about couples lines of development. And I happened to record him and sent his video to the YouTube channel. And that was so great. People came, very many people have seen it now. Mm-hmm. And then we begin the collaboration. You can find previous talks on the wisdomfactory.net. And we will do further talks now. Mm-hmm. In the moment, shall I show that?
Sure.
This is a sort of, maybe you can explain what it is. And we should also say what you are working about. That's a topic which is very interesting, I would say, for everybody of us. Love, relationships, and life in couple.
So as you said, Heidi, previously we talked about the couples line on previous talks that people can find on the Wisdom Factory. But I'm doing a deeper dive into the upper stages of couples and the comparison between first love skills and spiritual love skills is quite illuminating in terms of the path ahead, that if we want to realize some of this potential in our intimacy, then it kind of points out how far we really have to grow individually. So we'll do a deeper dive on this in the next couple of months, I believe, when we schedule this.
Yeah. Okay, so let's show our lovely faces again.
Oh, that's.
Here we are.
All right.
So we are very happy that also you are coming in front of the camera.
Oh, yes.
And I really hope we will do
You
some.
twisted my arm, right?
Yeah. That we will do some of the talks online too, because this is such an interesting topic, and I think we really. You have seen how he rose in popularity as soon as he came out.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the conference and the reception, what you wanted to say?
Yes, I should say, as he comes, into his full glory, there are dangers, and so this is where Christine is extremely helpful. Keeping him
Keep
honest.
that ego in check.
That's right.
Right.
So,
Don't want to get him off his spiritual path.
no,
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
That's why I married a psychologist.
That is another topic to talk about, how two psychologists can stay together for such a long time, as you said, 33 years. You can see that they have managed sort of their couple's life staying so long together. And see, they're happy.
Yeah.
So far, we'll see how tonight goes.
Okay, go ahead.
So, how do you summarize an integral conference? And most of us that have been to them, every hour there's multiple sections going that we all want to participate in, but you have to pick one. So this is not going to be a comprehensive summary tonight. It's going to be the things between Christine and I that we managed to get to. And we couldn't possibly cover everything that's done, but that's the magnificence of the conferences. But I wanted to open up with what Bensei said, looking at the trajectory of growth.
Bensei, who's Bensei?
Bensei Gandhi, who has organized the first conference in 2014.
That's right.
And there were not so many people, but quite a few. He did a great preparation work, And then in 2016, where we met.
So, right. But in 2014, there were 496 participants from 32 countries. In 2016, the number of participants dropped a little bit to 450, but the number of countries increased to 35. In 2018, at one point or the other, there were 600 people that attended to a whopping 47 countries.
And this included all the continents except Antarctica.
So we need to find an integral person from Antarctica to complete it. So it really is developing, it's heartening, and that was part of our title. Are we moving beyond a European continental conference, and has this become the de facto international conference? And I think that Bensei and much of the leadership are already considering that possibility. So, should be interesting, but we want to start with Wilbur's opening remarks.
Yeah, Wilbur did one of the first keynotes of the conference, and the title was Religion, Ally or Enemy of Evolution. And he took Western religion to task for being stuck at the mythic stage of development. And back in the 3rd or 4th century, the church kind of squashed all waking up states. That had been a prominent part of early Christianity, but the church didn't want that to be a mainstay. So practice was really kind of de-emphasized, and all the belief systems that led into the mythic blue level became the most prominent. And I think some people would argue with Wilbur, but his point is Christianity is really kind of stuck because they don't have a waking up practice that they emphasize, and they are promoting a mythic level of development. And not everybody sees Christianity at this point like that. And in fact, Tom is going to talk about integral Christianity, which was presented by Brother David.
Yeah, just to conclude, one of the comments I like by Wilbur was the warning around narcissism and nihilism that affects the green mean. And that's going to integrate nicely in other people's talks like Cook Reuter and Jorge Ferreira, that they had similar warnings, not quite putting it that way. But should we go on?
Yeah.
So, as Christine said, Brother David Steindl Ras was magnificent. 92-year-old Benedictine monk, and the presence of this man in front of close to 600 people was something to remember. And I wasn't sure, was it the uniqueness of a Catholic cleric talking in integral concepts? Was it his presence? It was just incredible how he did it. But what he said is, we're one of the few animals, we're the only animal that has to confront our ultimate reality. And how fluent that is for the evolutionary development of both our spirituality and our individual development. So when we realize our oneness with the all, that becomes our first mystic experience. And he had a great way of saying that. After we have that peak experience, the intellectual ego goes, what was that? And he said, the answer you come up with is the beginning of doctrine. Does that mean?
Yeah, because you try to explain it with your mind. Yeah. And find rules.
So he makes the next observation. When you say, I want to live like that forever, that's the beginning of morality. Because we're bringing it into our lives, and we want to do what Plato said, follow the good, the true, and the beauty, at that point. And when the emotions finally set into this experience, and you want it again, that's the beginning of ritual. So you can see the evolutionary development of it, in terms of how we get to religion. So the problem is doctrine eventually turns into dogmatism. So it's dogmatism, moralism, and ritualism. And it is the isms that become frozen and it no longer has the spirit and warmth that originally incited it. Brilliant. How he conceptualized all this.
Yeah.
And what do you think he said it was, the way that we re-enchanted, the way, so that it's still alive today? The re-enchanting was we warm it with our heart. So we warm that life-giving water with our heart to make it become alive again. So, that was just brilliant. You could feel how alive it was for him in many ways. So, this was the man and what he could do. He had a few other truisms, and I believe he was citing a medieval mystic when he came up with this. When we grasp the mystery, it gives us knowledge. But when the mystery grasps us, it gives us wisdom. Yeah, isn't that nice?
Nice, very nice.
So we're all there with our mouths open going, whoa, that was amazing. And you know how those mornings, those conferences, and we're looking at each other going, could it get any better than this? Ultimately, he said, the great mystery has nothing to say other than, I love you. And then finally, I'm summarizing his whole keynote. The abyss of silence is the Father, and everything comes forth in it. from it. And it's only the Buddhists who emphasize the silence. Remember, this is a Catholic cleric.
Yeah, I know the mystics, and I was in Germany. Williges Jäger, he's another Benedict monk, and he's a Zen master also, and it's amazing the wisdom of these people. You know, they get ostracized from the church, you know, but they have really something to say. I don't know how it is in the case of Steinhauer. Is he still part of the church?
Who?
But,
Brother David?
Yeah, Brother David.
I think so.
So he managed.
He was certainly in the collar and everything.
Yeah, good. Okay.
So, I mean, those people like Teilhard de Chardin and
they have a special status, obviously, they can say it.
right, and they survived the, church, the Catholic Church, 2,000 years old.
Mm-hmm.
A couple more things he said. So the Buddhists focus on the silence, the Hindus, the understanding. They want to understand. And then finally, the Christians and the Muslims upon the word.
And the Jews.
And the Jews too, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
upon the word. So I thought that was brilliant. I'm going to look into that and try to see if I can learn more about that differentiation. Because again, it's another map that we begin to understand how people relate to the mystery and they ritualize it. But
can I expand upon that?
Please.
He was so popular, he got the longest standing ovation of anybody. And he was so popular that Bensei gave up his workshop in the afternoon so that Brother David could go and do a question and answer. He just spontaneously saw that everybody was so eager that he offered this time slot. And so it was Brother David, and then Doshin Michael Nelson was there also with him. But you were talking about the difference between the Buddhists, the Hindus, and the Judeo-Christian Islam. Brother David gave us a way to do an integral practice, which of course everybody wants to be able to do, right? Make it an experience. And he said it was stop, look, and go. Those three things. So the stop is why. See where life is heading, where is life bringing you, and ask why to the mystery. Mm-hmm. Okay? This has to do with silence.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The stop has to do with silence, and again, that was the Buddhists, what they focus on.
So to observe the silence.
Yes, and see the why. Next was look. And look is what? What is the opportunity that is in front of you? Mm-hmm. What is going on? And that is the word.
In the moment.
And that's the Judeo-Christian Islamic tradition, is the look. Okay? And the go is taking the opportunity, doing it, because it is in the doing that you understand. And that's the Hindu. Mm-hmm. And the how. Mm-hmm. So it is stop, look, go, why, what, how, silence, the word, and understanding by doing. Mm-hmm. He just did a wonderful, of course he said it much more elegantly, but it was so wonderful for him to bring us all to a place of integral practice that sounded so simple, but yet was obviously very profound and deep.
Yeah, sharing that level of wisdom at an integral level. I mean, it's extraordinary. It's, you have a sense he knows he's at his later stages and wanting to share those gifts. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like we're all sitting there going, thank you, thank you. Mm-hmm. But the integration was phenomenal. So these surprises are just unbelievable to happen in the conference.
Yeah.
So, to me, this is the good part that we all like, the ascension. But then remember, what was this all the way up, all the way down? If we're going to be really integrous, we have to do it all. And I'm not sure if Cook Reuter was the same day or not. Probably not.
Probably not the same day.
Yeah, it's all becoming a little bit of a blur. at this
It
point.
was 5 days, no?
Yeah.
From Tuesday to Sunday.
Yeah, depending if the pre-conference, I'm not sure of the days.
Yeah, it started Saturday, I believe.
No. Tuesday it started the pre-conference. It was-
You're contradicting me in public,
I do.
on camera.
Something that they added at this conference was an emphasis upon music. So we did the boat party the first night, and that's wonderful. You remember the boat party out on the lake, and the 4-piece, I wouldn't call it a band because it's not really a band. It was more shamanic music. Was wonderful, and we were all really into the drumming. And then they had a trio that played during breaks between the keynote speakers during the morning. And they were absolutely wonderful. And Tom will talk about that later, how we carried it over past the conference with the music being.
And the chanting.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So, starting our dissension down a little bit.
Yeah.
Worthwhile, though. Was Susan Cook-Reuter's keynote address. And she began the address with an acknowledgement, this is probably my last major integral conference. So it kind of set a mood, and it felt like, just like Brother David, she's saying, look, I've carried the ball as far as I can. It's up to you now. Start carrying it a little bit further. And that's the feeling I was getting, is some of these people that have been doing the heavy lifting for so long, kind of were going like, I'm not going to be here forever. And seeing more people from different countries like Russia and what else was there? Africa. And the quality of the people showing up, it gave hope for these people that, have their whole lives to, realize what integral is going to get integrated at different levels. It's really going to be something special. I have a lot of hope for it, in many ways. Cook-Reuter was a little bit more pessimistic. And we see that between different speakers. Like we all like Saltzman because she makes us feel
like everything is okay all the time.
We're going to be all okay.
Yeah.
And then we run into other people that, and Cook-Reuter at lunch after a keynote, had said, I don't think we're going to make it. And I'm like, really? For different reasons. But if I can summarize,
And by we not make it, she meant the human race.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
She didn't think that the human race was
There
going to
is
survive.
some reason to believe that.
yeah, there's a lot of people that have said that in this movement. So we know Cook-Reuter for her, developmental model that Terry O'Fallon took on and developed further, but she wanted to talk about the construct-aware stage. And we know that is when we realize that the illusion of knowing, that it is the postmodern realization, Hegel's realization of they're all models. As Wilbur likes to chide us, we're not going to find a buried tablet in the ground. So she was saying that our egos don't like the emptiness of there not being any absolute path to follow. There's both a freedom and an existential anxiety that comes out of that. And that's where existentialism came from. The only thing we could be sure of is our pain, as postmodernism is. But the ego we have to be careful about, because it's always coming up with a narrative and convincing itself that it knows, because it can't always deal with the contradiction, and it wants to always ignore our mortality.
Ignore mortality.
Mortality. That we're only here for a while. We're a little bit like Sisyphus. We all push the ball, and sometimes it rolls back down. But in time, I believe, and notice I'm using that faith word, I believe that it creates these evolutionary grooves that helps.
Yeah.
And it's honorable to be part of that.
Absolutely, that's the meaning we can give to our life, to have done our part in the work, let's say.
So she went on, and in many ways, it felt like another one of these summaries of my knowledge. The wanting of the ego that always wants to inflate itself and use any content possible to inflate itself. And she summarized that she called us all bozos on the same bus. Bozos on the same bus. I wasn't quite sure I heard that correct.
It's
And
a bozo.
it's kind of like a clown.
Clown.
Okay.
And her warning was, if you don't want to be the fool, don't look in the mirror. So, I mean, I really appreciate Cook Reuter, because I don't think, and this is going to fit into Jorge Ferrier's, when we do his talk about him, because some of the divide in the transpersonal and the integral movement were over these issues. And he spoke, he was there at the conference too. But when I hear Cook Reuter, I always hear her challenge us to, can we maintain that tension between modernism and postmodernism? Can we use some of the rigors of empiricism and ground what we believe in some scientific inquiry, while we use the freedom of postmodernism to speculate metaphysically? And we all like to speculate and move on and do that. So I felt like that was a hard warning on her part. But she didn't believe that, one, that we can maintain that. Because Wilbur has said, we hold all these models, including integral, loosely. And I didn't feel she gave that fair shift in her presentation. And I'm not as pessimistic. I think, as Saltzman says, evolution is painful and ugly, but it's persistent and it seems to move on. But another one of these presentations that were powerful and brilliant.
Yeah, she continued to bring us back to the theme of the fool, and complete, Suzanne Cookwood, complete with jester hat and some jokes about being the fool. And it was the contrast between the ego feeling it knows and has knowledge, and the construct aware, which is more wisdom. And she was constantly, telling us the difference between ego and knowing, and the construct aware and being wise. And she said, being a fool is having a construct aware wisdom that drops ego's pretense of knowing. So it's good to be the fool.
Can you say that again? I like that.
Being a fool is having a construct-aware wisdom that drops the ego's pretentious knowing. Yeah. So don't think you know too much. It's better not to know too much. It's better to be aware and wise.
Or not to cling on the knowledge, no, not to take it for the only thing, which is the only explanation of the question. Yeah, I can relate to that.
Yeah, and that is, it's an evolving thing. It's evolutionary forces that we still don't see. We can't see those tears from, where are we being fools now? Another theme that comes in right here that was part of the experience is the green level. I mean, Wilbur really went after the narcissism and, how do you say that? Narcissism and
I didn't write down anything about narcissism.
That he has it as a clean meme, no? That's maybe narcissism and wanting to dominate everybody else.
right, but one of the themes that came up And given that most of us, even that attend these conferences, our center of gravity tends to be more green, at least I believe, and it peaks occasionally into first tier. I think
Second
more,
tier.
Second tier.
Second tier.
second tier, I'm sorry.
Mhm.
It peaks occasionally into second tier, especially when we're around each other.
Yeah.
You know, the transparency and the love. But some of our green shows up when we don't want to be controversial. So see, you get credits when she undermined you.
Politically correct.
Politically correct, right? Which the lower tiers can't stand, I mean, the lower stages. But at the conference, it reminded me in terms of when green doesn't name what isn't good, true, and beautiful and stand up to it, it allows some negative elements in our community.
Yeah.
And we have to guard against that. I mean, I felt like Cook Reuter was saying that too, is if we're not going to fly off on some sort of metaphysical tangent, there's a lot we have to pay attention to at the green center that we're at.
Oh yeah, because I think green is often abused by people who are using the open-heartedness and the wanting to include everybody, and then they include the wrong people, and then these people take the command, no? And that is not really. We should really be careful about that. We should really pay attention and stand up. My conference title, my participation contribution title would have been The Journey into Visibility. So standing up for what you think needs to be said at the moment, instead of, no, I cannot do that, you know, and getting the courage to do that, you know. And I think it's part of what when we want to be an integral, what we really have to commit to stand up, even if it's uncomfortable, because otherwise you suffer now a little bit, because, you know, you get yourself visible and people might say, oh, what do you want, and blah, blah, blah. But if you sort of betray yourself by not saying what is really, what you see is true or is wrong in that case, and don't stand up against that, you have betrayed yourself and your truth, your integrity in some way. And I think it's really important that we do that, instead of thinking, we will forget that, and no, it's not so important now. That will mess up, and at the end you are a false, totally false personality, you know, and not anymore, or never been, I don't know, integral. You say integral?
Integral.
Yeah. I don't want to say integral as a theory, but as integrity, having integrity as a person, you know. And I think that's, for me, what we should go when we go to second tier. That's integrity, getting ever more integrity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Absolutely. I love this discussion, because that is why in politics, you know, being politically correct is such a hot button. When people lower on the stages, they understand there are red people out there. Mm-hmm. And if there isn't a strong blue that imposes a limit upon them, mm-hmm. they're fearful of it. And when they see green not having that strength, then it doesn't create trust, and it negates the love that we prefer. But everybody isn't there. One of the things you've told me since being in Italy is how, you know, red and blue this country is in many ways, which surprises me, but that is the world. Mm-hmm. One other thing, as a psychologist, and, you know, borrowing from psychoanalytic theory and kind of diagnostics we use, narcissism is hard to detect. There's not a lot of stupid narcissists, other than Trump. Usually they can be smooth with very good interpersonal skills, but it's the intent. When you look at the focus, is there that generosity? Is there that love? And there won't be. Mm-hmm. So I get fooled. We get fooled by narcissists, and, you know, we deal with it quite frequently. But we have to be on guard in our communities for
Yeah, yeah.
that, for the reasons you had said, Heidi.
I don't want to go into this, I just want to say that you see Italy now as red and blue. I also want to say there's an awful lot of Italy that is still purple.
Yeah.
Wow.
Who lives completely off that social grid.
Especially in the countryside, in these places where we are. These people are kind and generous and everything, but trustworthy, absolutely trustworthy. But how can I say? They just live as it is like this. That's what it is, you know. Work from morning to the evening and do everything as it is and not even self-sabotage in some way, you know, ask so little money for what they are doing.
Yeah.
For instance, a red person wouldn't do that, you know, but they are still here. So.
Yeah, I mean, we know evolution is a very slow process.
Yeah.
You know, biological evolution, social evolution is relatively quick, but even though it's surprising that they're still purple, I guess as I think about it, it isn't all that surprising.
No.
You know, as you get in areas where there's less opportunity and less exposure.
And it's much more, let's say, tradition. It is still things as they were. I mean, you have seen now a little bit, not the worst, let's say worst is not the right word, but medieval towns, which we have here. There are others. When you imagine to live there, your life is different. I mean, what you saw today, Nani, it's a city and it's sort of luminous and also developed, has shops and everything, but there are really villages where you think, okay, maybe the younger generation goes into red now, you know, from these places.
And
they have to have
to
everything now, but the older generation, they're still there.
So it's hard to think of going into red as progress.
Yeah.
But you see, then you have an ego.
Mm,
In purple, you don't have an ego.
not
You're
really.
completely within.
That's why they're so contented, probably, with what is. They're very contented, they don't have an ego
Yeah.
propelling them.
I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and the danger is that they get exploited
Yeah.
by the others.
Yeah, I'm thinking about what Heidi said about living amidst, you know, being from California, where old is 100 years old. But seeing the ruins just a kilometer away from here, and, you know, they're not on display, they're just in the woods. I mean, you live with that.
Yeah, sure.
Whereas in these cities that are 300, 400, 500, 600 years, 1,000 years old, some of them.
Yeah.
It's
And
pretty
people live in the
extraordinary.
houses which are 800 years old, you know, redone, but that's the origin was there.
Well, we have a street, several streets actually, but there's a main street in the old district of Trickley, our village. And the walls there go back to 1100. And these are highly prized properties. Yes.
Wow.
Anyway, the life is different,
Yeah.
really, really different. And we have to take it into account that it's not only the levels of development, it's also where you were born and where you grow up, which shape your worldview, you know.
Yeah, Brother David said that is how you interpret the mystical experiences depends upon your environment, the time you were born, what's going on, and how it's really a dynamic process. You know, 360 degrees are all quadrants, all levels, lines, states, stages.
But not only the mystical experience, the whole life experience depends on what you have a completely other different background than a person who is born here in the countryside, you know. It's just when you are born in Berlin or you are born in Otricoli, I mean, or Los Angeles, you know, it's not comparable. We always assume that the others are sort of like us and see the world like us, but the individual experience is so different.
It's so important to get out of the States and see something other than that.
Yes.
I mean, just seeing Europe,
Yeah,
we haven't
He
talked about
means the
Asia.
50 states.
Right, states. Right, not the state experience.
Okay, continue a little bit.
I want to talk about Jorge Ferreira. I know
Ferreira.
you say his name, Jorge Ferreira. He's on the faculty of the California Institute of Transpersonal Studies and
California Institute of Integral Studies.
California Institute of Integral Studies. Sorry. And I thought him being at this conference was a bit of a healing because we know that Wilbur came out of the transpersonal area before he wrote Spectrum of Consciousness. And the transpersonal psychology and humanistic studies, which are two of the mainstream areas with it there, tend to be a lot more academic. And my guess, and I'm sure people like Diane and Jeff could correct me on this, that was way too restrictive for Wilbur. He didn't want to be a classic academician. He wanted to get out there and draw these maps. And he didn't want to go through that meticulous peer review process in academia. And when he dropped out of that, and it really took the heart out, like the prodigal son never came back, and he took the heart out of those movements, it was really an injury. It was good for Integral because he was able to produce the prodigious contribution that he did, but it left the wound. And so having something like Jorge Ferreira there was a good experience. But this is what he said. He said the transpersonal movement could benefit from the solid basis created by our developmental models. He gave us that. And I have to say that the developmental models, along with the quadrants, are some of the real rock solid foundation of being an integralist and the way we conceptualize reality. But now listen to the similarity to Cook-Reuter and what he said. Integral could learn from the transpersonal a bit more modesty. And that there's more than one way of growth to get to some of the endpoints and a variety of endpoints. And I mean, I really like that. He was saying by softening these claims, integral theory can attract more fields. And that's where we're having problems. Like, I've taught at a clinical psychology program, and we're still considered very, very fringe because of the lack of research and, not holding that modern perspective, not doing what Cook-Reuter said. This is only a hypothesis I have. I don't have the level of empirical truth yet. And we're not always going to have it. We don't have to stop that is the ultimate reality. But if we're going to, really maintain that, we have to do that. So, and if we do that, we'll avoid a form of spiritual narcissism, he called it. And believing that our method alone is superior.
Yeah, that is often the case, no? That people do that. There's something better. What is that? It's called EGO?
Ego.
Well, when I first met Integral, I thought, wow, now I have it. This is it. Why cheat me from that phase? I think many of us probably had some kind of aha when we understood what Integral was all about. And it is a huge jump from wherever we were. And so it just seems like the new world. It's 1492, discovering America.
But I do think it is. And the only thing is that we have to be careful not to think that is now the only reality, the only possibility to see the world. Because maybe there might be a slight variation somewhere.
Oh, sure. We have to get over that.
Yeah, not to become like the church became, dogmatic on the things. And this is the danger.
So, part of my role, physician well-being chair at a local hospital. And the way I present to them is I'll show them a study, and then I'll show them the flaws in the design and the dependent variables, because I'm dropping into an orange level to get their attention,
Yeah.
so I have credibility.
Mm-hmm.
And then I slowly raise them, their center of gravity by an experience, an embodiment of the possibilities, so that I don't lose them in the process.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what happens in like the transpersonal humanistic studies, when you're in an academic environment, if you want credibility, you have to have a scientific viewpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And philosophy, the social scientists, they're called pseudo-experimental designs. So right there, they pick up a lot of shadow,
Mm-hmm.
that they're not legitimate, because the queen of science is physics. Even though Einstein comes around and talks about relativity. So it's, the limits of it showed up. But that's what some of these departments suffer under. So the beauty of integrals, we embody the spirit and we ascend, we feel the joy. But we want to be anchored too.
Yeah.
So it was a nice healing though.
Mm-hmm.
And who was that saying that?
Which part?
Who you are talking now about? You were talking about a person who is now inspiring you to say that. Ferrer. Ah, okay.
Yeah, him being there is the healing of it. But, if we're going to successfully bring in more academia and have more mainstream credibility, we have to talk orange language.
Yeah, sure.
Not to mention, it keeps us articulating the lower right and grounding what we know. So at the end of the conference, just like the integral people, we had the musicians performing. And, as the night wore on, different people got up there and played instruments or did whatever talent they had. Jorge got up there and he danced what dance was it?
Well, it's kind of like like a flamingo type of a Latin dance.
A Latin dance,
With
very expressive.
With Maria Bailey.
Right, a promising new person in this field. She was great. She was a great dancer. And then after, I said to Jorge, I said, you have to admit, these are great people to party with. And he goes, yeah, they are. Because the love flows so freely. I mean, it's so much fun that people just get up there.
Being willing to be seen, showing up.
People willing to be seen.
Yeah. And this is why I'm attracted to these conferences and also to the German ones. I went every time they were on, because it's just a different atmosphere of meeting people. Normally you don't meet assholes. But really this is a different way of communicating and embracing and also of listening. There is listening practice in real time, let's say, That's good. And we were very, very sorry that we couldn't go.
Oh,
So
indeed.
now we have at least a report of what has happened.
First-hand report here.
First-hand report. Do you have others to go on?
I do.
Okay.
Good.
Roger Walsh was there, and his talk was called Sacred Service, the Yoga of Transforming Work, Service, and Life into a Continuous Contemplative Practice. So he talked about karma yoga, and that is turning your life's work into a continuous contemplative practice. And he had 10 steps, and I am going to go through all 10 steps.
10
or 10
minutes, 10
principles.
steps.
He said, for number one, stop. Take a moment and be present to the activity that you're going to do. 2,
Which sounds like Brother David.
yes. Dedicate your work and its outcome to a higher purpose.
Yeah.
3, set an intention. Why am I doing this? Ask yourself. 4, attempt to do the work as impeccably as you can. Now he emphasized attempt to do it as impeccably as you can because of course, you know, perfection is not always achievable.
Yes.
Or
5,
desirable.
yeah. 5,
We're all peccable.
bring awareness and mindfulness to the activity, both inner and outer awareness. 6, explore our reactions, our shadow and feeling to what we're doing. 7, release attachment. And I thought this was especially important. He said, release attachment to the outcome of what you're doing.
Right.
You know, try to do it impeccably, but don't stay attached to what happens, which I thought was brilliant.
And not so easy to do.
Not so easy to do. Stop when you're finished so you can reflect and learn from the experience. Those are steps 8 and 9. And 10, offer the benefit of our action to the welfare of all. He talked about the cycle of giving to the world so the world can benefit from us and bringing the world back to us so we benefit from the world. This cycle of giving and receiving from the world. And again, he called this karma yoga and continuous contemplative practice. And I like that. I like it when they give us steps. I like those steps. Do this, and this. Okay, I got it.
That's the beauty of the lower right.
Yeah.
We just don't talk about it. We find injunctions so we can practice it, to embody it. And it does feel like we're bringing that together, you know, more. So, can I tell you a little bit about the Magical Mystery Tour?
Yeah.
Oh.
We still
You have to
have
tell
some minutes,
people what
about
it is.
10 minutes.
10 minutes?
Yeah, we haven't talked about it at all, and I'm so curious. It was one of our inspiration points, like holidays for this year, you know, because I loved it so much, but both times we went there.
So this is a 3-day bus tour,
Yeah.
and there's about 60 people on the bus. And Vence, Ganti, and Orsh are the 2 leaders of the group, and we travel.
Yeah, we travel. Some funny moments, like stopping at a Hungarian supermarket, and we needed water, and we just totally depleted their whole case of water. I mean, the conveyor belt was stacked this high with water on, something like 18,000 florins, 18,000 florins worth of water.
Well, three days worth of water for 60 people.
Yeah.
It was a lot.
It was funny. But there was a moment, and the last part of the journey, and there's so many moments, but I want to tell you about, and it was inside the bath. One of the
Thermal
old-
bath, yeah,
in Hungary itself.
Budapest.
I'm sorry, Budapest itself. And it wasn't one of the largest baths there, but it had a dome ceiling and those wonderful acoustics that you put a group of integralists inside of it and they start chanting. And this bath had, you know, regular people from Budapest there, and it was invaded by 60 integralists. And we start chanting from all the different pools, and you could see them looking around, what's going on. And then we started floating each other on our backs, you know, kind of like, it was almost like a sacred, I called it amniotic fluid. I wrote it up for one of the integral websites. Because we're floating each other on it as we look to the light streaming down, taking turns with each other. And I mean, it was so precious. I mean, that's the beauty of these people. Even though our centers are green, I do think we're realizing those second tier moments. I think we're really bringing on that joy, because most people just lean against the walls, keep it in this private place, missing all the opportunity that what's always there, the love that's always there. And there we are floating each other. So a Frenchman comes up to me, goes, "Who are you people?" So I gave him the elevator pitch of Integral. And he goes, "Uh-huh." So he joins us. And he starts floating his wife gently through the water. And I'm watching him. And then in a moment, he signaled her and he took her under the water, which none of us were doing, floated her under the water and brought her up at the right moment. I was stunned. I went, and then when I caught his eye, I smiled. That because he participated, he added something even better. I was stunned by that moment, because that moment, that dynamic between the feminine and the masculine is how I interpreted it. And that absolute submission and trust in that moment. I've been wanting to try it with Christine to see it. So, I mean, that only happens among our group. I went to a Hungarian woman and I asked her, one of the people that were there, and I said, "Can I float you?" She smiled and said no, but I could feel she wanted me to.
Yeah.
But obviously I respected it and didn't do it. And 20 minutes later when I was leaving, I was just about ready to get back on the bus. She came up, tapped me on the shoulder, said, "Safe journey to you." And I went to her and I realized we were going to be connected now forever. See, we just don't know how this works, those moments. It is so complex if we trust those times that we don't know what we're evolving. But only in this group of people can you have those times, huh?
I know.
Very special.
Yeah, the ambiance, the surrounding makes it possible. That's the we space, let's say, Which is intensifying what is in you, and it creates more than just the sum of all of us. Yeah. I find always these we space experiences so worthwhile. Doing all the effort, like going from far away. You are from California to Hungary. It's a big commitment to do that.
How many miles is that from Southern Cal?
I don't even know.
It's
14 hours.
Yes,
All I know.
Painful hours.
Yes.
But it speaks to the hunger we have.
Yes.
That we'll travel these distances to be with our tribe.
Yeah.
I always cry at the end of these conferences because I can't get out of bed and find somebody that I can just connect with right away.
Yeah.
You have somebody, but not somebody new.
Right. It's not the variety of people, ongoing. So.
And this feeling of connection between relative strangers, and there is no shame, that is just, you can allow yourself to look into each other's eyes and see the real you in the other. And this is so precious, because in normal life, how do you do that? Where do you do that? Right,
and that's the transparency. Is if we, as Wilbur said, we wake up, clean up, grow up, then inevitably we show up with the transparency. And what shows up? The love. So sometimes when you get on these websites, people get lost in the detail of, are we really integralists? Or are we just sharing good feeling? I think that's a little critical. I mean, do we have a long way to go? Of course. But these moments are promises for a future. And will it be Freud wrote, is it Eros or Thanatos that's gonna ultimately? I say it's Eros.
Terry Patton said, life transforms us and awakens us, and we need to trust existence, trust evolution. And the great philosopher Ben Seganti said, keep the wisdom going and the heart glowing. And I love that. It's just perfect.
That's good.
This is also a perfect quote for the closing tonight, because we have talked an hour. And I'm really looking forward to see you again in person, but also to do the next talks with you. We will
Thank you. Thank you very much. Enjoyed it.
Oh, and my favorite part was I didn't have to talk all too much.
And very grateful that Mark could participate, because today he had his first chemotherapy. So pray with us that we can do this show together for a long time.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, when you watch it in replay or now. Unfortunately, in the live session now, nobody has written a comment. Maybe there was nothing to ask. Anyway, you can still do that, even when you watch in replay. Write us the comments and we will answer to them, okay? And ask questions to Tom, ask them to Christine, ask them to show up in the Wisdom Factory. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.